Tom Harris, a young postman, rang the doorbell, package in hand. On his familiar route, he never expected the horror that would greet him as the door creaked open to reveal Emily, a 7-year-old girl, her clothes disheveled and dark stains on her pants. A state of alarming Tom caught a glimpse inside her home. What he saw made his blood run cold. In that heart-stopping moment, he knew he had to act fast. Before continuing, let us know where you're watching from today. Let's begin the story. Tom Harris had been delivering mail in Maplewood, a small but tight-knit black neighborhood, for almost a decade. The kind of place where neighbors looked out for one another, where kids played double dutch on the sidewalk, and where Sunday mornings smelled like homemade biscuits and coffee. At 6 feet 2 inches with dark skin, a strong build, and a slight limp from an old basketball injury, Tom had the kind of presence that made people feel safe. His deep voice carried warmth, and his smile, rare but genuine, had a way of making people feel seen. He hadn't always been a mailman. Once upon a time, he had dreams of playing pro basketball. But life had its way of humbling people. After losing his wife, Keisha, to a sudden illness 3 years ago, he needed something steady, something that kept him connected to people. Being a mailman wasn't glamorous, but it gave him purpose. On this particular afternoon, as he walked his route, the familiar rhythm of the neighborhood soothed him. The distant hum of a blues song from a cracked window, kids laughing, the scent of someone frying chicken down the block. Then he saw her, a little girl sitting alone in the yard of a rundown house. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with deep brown skin, big eyes that held too many secrets for someone her age, and neatly braided hair that looked like someone had cared enough to do it right. She wore faded jeans with visible stains and a t-shirt 2 sizes too big. Tom slowed his steps, frowning. He knew most of the kids on his route, but he had never seen her before. "Hey, little mama," he called gently. "You all right?" She looked up at him with hesitation, hugging her knees to her chest. "I'm okay." Tom crouched down to her level. "You sure? You look like you could use a hug or something." Emily hesitated, then wiped her nose with the back of her hand. My pants got dirty." Tom glanced at her clothes again. These weren't the kind of stains a kid got from playing in the dirt. These were old stains that told a story. "Where your mama at?" Emily's eyes darted toward the house, a rundown 2-story home with peeling paint and a broken front step. The curtains were drawn, but even from the sidewalk, Tom could see the signs. Dirty dishes stacked in the window, trash bags piling up near the door. He heard something too. Raised voices. A woman's voice, tight with frustration, and a man's, rough and sharp. Emily flinched at the sound. Tom's stomach tightened. He had seen situations like this before. Kids neglected, caught in the storm of grown folks' mess. He wanted to ask more, but he knew better than to push too hard. "You eat today?" he asked instead. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "What you eat?" She lowered her eyes. "Cereal," Tom sighed. Cereal wasn't dinner. He reached into his mailbag, pulled out a granola bar he kept for himself, and handed it to her. "Here, take this." Emily took it carefully, like she wasn't used to kindness. She unwrapped it slowly, then took a small bite. "Good?" Tom asked. She nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Mailman." Tom chuckled. "It's Tom, baby girl. You call me Mr. Tom, all right?" "Okay, Mr. Tom." Tom glanced at the house again. Something wasn't sitting right with him. "You got people inside?" he asked carefully. Emily didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "My mom. And Mark." That name, Mark. The way she said it made Tom's gut clench. Just then, the front door opened with a creak, and a woman stepped out. Linda. Thin, mid-30s, with tired eyes and a face that had once been pretty. but was now worn down by life. She wore an oversized t-shirt, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She froze when she saw Tom. "Hey," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mailman, right?" Tom stood up slowly. "Yeah. You Emily's mama?" Linda nodded, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "She ain't bothering you, is she?" "Nah," Tom said, watching her carefully. "Just chatting." Behind her, through the crack of the door, Tom caught a glimpse of empty beer bottles on the floor, a cigarette smoldering in an ashtray, and the shadow of a man sitting on the couch. Then he heard it. A small whimper, faint from inside the house. Tom's chest tightened. "You got another little one in there?" Linda's eyes darted to the side. "It's not a good time, man." She reached for Emily's arm, but the little girl tensed. Tom's jaw clenched. Every instinct in him screamed that something was wrong. "You need any help?" he asked carefully. Linda hesitated just for a second, and in that second, Tom saw something in her eyes. Fear. But before she could answer, a voice from inside cut through the air. "Linda, get your ass back in here." A deep, commanding voice. Linda flinched. Tom's hands curled into fists. Linda forced another smile. "We're fine. Thanks for looking out." She pulled Emily toward the house. Emily didn't fight, but as she was led inside, she glanced back at Tom. Just for a moment. That look said everything. "Help me." The door slammed shut. Tom stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight. He had seen enough in his lifetime to know what was happening behind those doors, and he sure as hell wasn't about to walk away. Tom pulled out his phone and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? "There's a little girl in danger," Tom said, his voice low but firm. "And I ain't leaving till somebody does something about it." Tom stood outside the house, his grip tightening around his phone. His heart pounded with frustration as he listened to the 911 operator's calm voice. "Sir, can you confirm the child is in immediate danger?" Tom exhaled sharply. "I just told you. There's a little girl in there and something ain't right. I heard a kid whimpering inside. You need to send someone." The operator hesitated. "We'll dispatch an officer to check on the welfare of the child. Please stay on the scene if it's safe." Safe? Tom had been in enough rough situations to know when something was about to go sideways. And Mark, whoever he was, had the kind of voice that made a man's gut instinct kick in. He stayed by his mail truck, keeping an eye on the house. Less than 10 minutes later, a black and white patrol car rolled up. 2 officers stepped out, Officer Jordan, a young white cop who looked barely out of training, and Sergeant Denise Walker, a tough black woman in her late 40s with a no-nonsense expression. Tom felt a flicker of hope when he saw Walker. She wasn't the type to brush things off. "You the one who called it in?" she asked, giving Tom a once-over. "Yeah," he said. "That little girl, Emily, she looks scared. There's another kid inside too, I think." Walker nodded. "All right, let's take a look." Walker knocked on the door, firm and authoritative. "Police, open up." Silence. Then, after a long pause, the door creaked open. Linda stood there, forcing a weak smile. "Oh, officers, everything okay?" "We got a call about a welfare check," Walker said, her sharp eyes scanning Linda's face. "Can we come in?" Linda hesitated. Behind her, a shadow shifted in the dimly lit hallway. "What's this about?" a deep voice rumbled. "Mark." The man stepped forward, tall and muscular, with dark eyes that carried a silent warning. His shirt was wrinkled. Tattoos crept up his arms, and his jaw twitched like a man who didn't like being questioned. Walker didn't flinch. "Sir, we need to check on the children." Mark let out a short, humorless laugh. "We're all good here, just a misunderstanding." Linda nodded quickly. "Yeah, everything's fine." Tom clenched his jaw. Lies. Walker glanced at Tom, then back at Linda. "Ma'am, can we speak to your daughter?" Linda swallowed hard, then looked over her shoulder. "Emily, baby, come here a second." The little girl appeared in the hallway, her small hands gripping the edge of her shirt. She looked at the officers, then at Tom. "Hey, sweetheart," Walker said softly. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded stiffly. Tom's stomach twisted. That wasn't the nod of a safe child. That was fear. But before anyone could press further, Mark stepped forward, his voice dripping with fake politeness. "Look, officers, we appreciate you checking in, but my girl already told y'all, we good. No need to waste your time." Walker held his gaze for a long second. Then she nodded. "All right, but we'll be following up." Mark's jaw twitched again, but he stepped back. "Do what you gotta do." Tom felt helpless as he watched the officers walk away. Emily glanced at him one last time before the door shut. That look again. "Help me." Tom followed the officers back to their car. "That's it," he demanded. "You just gonna walk away?" Walker sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "I don't like it either, but unless we see physical evidence of abuse or neglect, we can't take the kids." Tom shook his head. "That man, Mark, he's bad news." Walker gave him a knowing look. "Yeah, I caught that too." "So what now?" Walker opened her car door. "Now? I start digging." She handed him a card. "If you see or hear anything else, call me." Tom took it, but his gut told him waiting wasn't an option. He wasn't about to let this go. That night, Tom sat at his kitchen table, staring at the card Walker had given him. He could still see Emily's scared eyes, hear that whimper from inside the house. He pulled out his laptop. If the cops weren't going to move fast, he would. He started by searching Mark's name in the county records. Nothing obvious. Then he tried Linda. His stomach dropped. Linda Harper, Domestic Incident Report, 2023. He clicked. The details were thin. Just a brief report stating that officers responded to a domestic dispute. No arrests were made. Then he checked Maplewood crime reports. A few minutes later, he found what he was looking for. Multiple reports of drug activity near Linda's street. Names weren't listed, but it was enough to set off alarm bells. Tom leaned back, exhaling sharply. Mark was mixed up in some bad stuff. And that meant Emily and her little brother weren't just dealing with abuse. They were in real danger. The next morning, Tom was back on his route, but his mind wasn't on delivering mail. He had a plan. He walked up to Linda's house, making sure to time it when Mark wasn't home. He knocked lightly. Linda cracked the door open. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. Tom's voice was low. "I know what's going on, Linda, and I know you're scared." Her eyes darted around. "You need to leave. You got to get your babies out of here." She let out a hollow laugh. "And go where?" Before he could answer, a small voice piped up. "Mr. Tom?" Emily stood behind her mother, clutching a raggedy stuffed animal. Tom crouched down. "Hey, baby girl." She didn't say anything, just reached out and took his hand. Linda's breath hitched. She looked at her daughter, then at Tom. And in that moment, Tom knew. She wanted help. She just didn't know how to ask. Before she could say anything, tires screeched outside. Mark's car. Linda's face went pale. "Go," she whispered. "Please." Tom hesitated, then stepped back just as Mark stormed toward the house, his eyes narrowing. He smirked. "Mailman, huh? You sure do ask a lot of questions." Tom held his gaze, refusing to show fear. Mark chuckled darkly. "Stay in your lane, old man." Then he disappeared into the house, slamming the door behind him. Tom stood there for a long moment. One thing was clear. He wasn't backing down. Tom couldn't sleep. Something about the way Linda looked at him that morning haunted him. She wasn't just scared, she was trapped. And Emily, the way she had reached for his hand, that wasn't just a little girl being friendly. That was a silent plea. Tom wasn't sure what his next move should be, but he knew one thing. He wasn't letting this go. Then, just past midnight, a knock at his door made him sit up in bed. He reached for the bat he kept by the nightstand and moved cautiously toward the door. When he opened it, he froze. Linda? She stood there, her eyes swollen from crying, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. And beside her, gripping her leg, was Emily. "Mr. Tom," the little girl whispered. Behind them, parked across the street, was an old green sedan with a woman sitting in the driver's seat. Tom's eyes flicked back to Linda. "I need help," she whispered. Tom stepped onto the porch, scanning the street for any sign of Mark. "Come inside, hurry." But Linda shook her head. "I can't stay, I need you to watch Emily for a few days." Tom blinked. "What?" "I got a plan," Linda said quickly. "I'm going to get my son and I'm going to get out. But I need Emily safe." Tom hesitated, then glanced at the car. The woman in the driver's seat rolled down the window, revealing silver braids, sharp eyes, and a no-nonsense expression. "Mr. Tom, meet my mama," Linda said. The woman stepped out of the car. Ruth Williams, Emily's grandmother. Tom had never met her, but he had heard her name before. Years ago, Ruth was a respected teacher at Maplewood High, known for her strict but fair ways. Then one day, she was just gone. Ruth folded her arms, giving Tom a once-over. "You the mailman?" "Yes, ma'am," she nodded. "Linda says you a good man. We need a good man right now." Tom frowned. "Where are y'all going?" Linda exhaled. "Mark's got people watching me. I can't move with both kids without raising suspicion. But if I go back in there, I can get Liam. I just need time." Tom looked down at Emily, who was staring at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Please, Mr. Tom," she whispered. Tom's heart clenched. Then he nodded. "All right." Inside Tom's house, Emily sat on the couch, holding her stuffed bear tightly. Tom made her a peanut butter sandwich, watching as she took small bites. Linda paced the room, nerves on edge. "I know I messed up," she admitted. "I should have left Mark a long time ago." Ruth scoffed. "You damn right you should have." Linda flinched but didn't argue. "I need to fix this." Tom sat across from her. "You really think you can get Liam without Mark noticing?" Linda's jaw tightened. "I have to." Ruth spoke up. "She ain't going alone." Linda looked at her mother, surprised. "Mama, I said what I said," Ruth interrupted. "I ain't let you get mixed up in this foolery for nothing. And I sure as hell ain't letting that man take my grandbabies." Tom nodded slowly. "All right, y'all get Liam, and I'll keep Emily safe." Linda reached out, squeezing Emily's hand. "Baby, you listen to Mr. Tom, okay? He's gonna take care of you." Emily nodded, but tears welled in her eyes. "You promise you'll come back?" Linda swallowed hard. "I promise." Tom's stomach twisted. He wanted to believe her. But something told him this wasn't going to be that simple. The early morning air was thick with tension as Linda and Ruth pulled away from Tom's house. The headlights of Ruth's old sedan flickered before vanishing into the darkness, leaving only silence behind. Tom stood on the porch, his arms crossed, watching the road long after they were gone. He felt a deep unease settle in his gut. He didn't trust Mark, and he sure as hell didn't trust the system to protect Linda. Beside him, Emily clutched her stuffed bear. Her tiny fingers gripped the fabric so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Mr. Tom," she whispered, "you think Mama's gonna be okay?" Tom crouched beside her, looking into those wide, scared eyes. He could lie. He could tell her everything was going to be fine. But he'd seen enough in life to know that promises like that didn't mean much. "I think your mama's strong," he said instead. "And your grandma? Ain't nobody messing with that woman." Emily gave him a tiny smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Tom sighed. "Come on, little mama. Let's get you inside." But just as he was about to turn back to the house, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Detective Maria Gonzalez. Tom answered. "Yeah? You home?" Maria's voice was tense. "I need to talk to you." Tom's stomach tightened. "I got Emily with me." Maria cursed under her breath. "Stay put. I'm on my way." Less than 20 minutes later, Maria's police cruiser pulled up in front of Tom's house. She stepped out, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket instead of her usual uniform. The second she saw Emily peeking out from behind Tom's legs, her expression darkened. "Damn it, Tom." Tom narrowed his eyes. "What?" Maria exhaled sharply. "You have any idea how dangerous this is?" "Linda asked me to keep her safe," Tom said firmly. "And that's what I'm doing." Maria shook her head. "Mark is dangerous, Tom. He's got connections. He's been careful, but I've been digging into him. He's tied to a local drug operation, and not the small-time stuff. People who cross him, they don't walk away clean." Tom's jaw clenched. "So what? I should have just left Emily in that house?" Maria sighed. "Number. But we need to do this the right way." She crouched down to Emily's level, softening her tone. "Hey, sweetheart, you okay?" Emily nodded, but didn't say a word. Maria straightened and turned back to Tom. "Where's Linda?" "She and Ruth went to get Liam," Tom said. Maria muttered another curse. "This just keeps getting better." Before Tom could respond, a car rolled slowly down the street. A black SUV. Tinted windows. It slowed as it passed Tom's house. Tom and Maria both stiffened. The SUV lingered for a moment before speeding up and disappearing around the corner. Maria turned to Tom. "That was a warning." Tom's fist clenched. "Then let him know. I don't scare easy." Later that evening, after Maria left, Tom sat with Emily on the couch. She had barely spoken all day, and it worried him. "Hey, little mama," he said gently. "You hungry?" Emily shook her head. Tom sighed. "You want to tell me what's on your mind?" Silence. Then finally a whisper. "I'm scared." Tom's heart clenched. "I know, baby girl, but you're safe here." Emily hesitated, then looked up at him. "Mr. Tom, I saw something." Tom frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily bit her lip. "One time I woke up in the middle of the night. I heard Mama crying. Mark was yelling at her. I was scared, so I hid under the table." Tom stayed quiet, letting her talk. "Then this other man came," she continued. "He gave Mark a big bag. Mark looked inside and smiled. He gave the man money, then they shook hands." Tom's stomach dropped. "Do you remember what the man looked like?" Emily nodded slowly. "He had a scar on his face." Tom's hands tightened into fists. Emily had just described Trevor Blake, a known drug dealer. Mark wasn't just dangerous. He was deep in criminal business. And now, Tom had proof. The next morning, Tom called Maria and told her everything Emily had said. Maria didn't hesitate. That's enough to push Child Protective Services to investigate. But Tom wasn't convinced. "CPS didn't do nothing the last time." Maria's voice hardened. "This time they will. I'll make sure of it." By noon, CPS officers arrived at Tom's house. A caseworker, Melissa Carter, sat across from Emily, speaking in a soft voice. Emily was hesitant at first, but when Tom gave her a reassuring nod, she started to talk. An hour later, Melissa turned to Tom. "We're filing an emergency custody request. If the judge approves, Emily and Liam will be placed with Ruth." Tom exhaled. "How long will that take?" Melissa sighed. "Depends. If Linda cooperates, it could be quick. But if Mark tries to fight it..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Mark wouldn't just fight it. he'd make it hell. That night, Tom was locking up when he noticed something strange. His truck tires were slashed. His front porch was covered in spray paint, big red letters spelling out, "Stay away." And on the ground, right by his mailbox, was a crumpled piece of paper. Tom picked it up. "I see you, old man. Let the girl go before you regret it." Tom's blood ran cold. Mark was done sending warnings. Now it was personal. Tom spent half the night sitting in his living room, his shotgun propped against the wall. He wasn't a man who went looking for trouble, but if trouble came knocking, he'd answer. Around 3 a.m., his phone rang. He answered instantly. "Yeah?" It was Linda. Her voice was frantic. "Tom, he took Liam." Tom shot up. "What?" Linda sobbed. "I tried to get him, but Mark, he found out. He took my baby." Ruth grabbed the phone. Her voice was steel. "We need to move, now." Tom was already grabbing his keys. "Where is he?" Linda hiccuped through her tears. He's at his brother's house, out by the old train yard." Tom gritted his teeth. "I'm on my way." But before he could step out the door, Emily grabbed his hand. Tears streamed down her face. "Please bring my brother back." Tom bent down, pressing a hand to her cheek. "I will, little mama." Then he walked out the door and into the fight of his life. Tom gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. The old truck rumbled down the dark road, headlights cutting through the misty night. In the passenger seat, Ruth sat stiff-backed, her silver braids pulled into a tight bun, her hands clenched into fists. Linda was in the back, shaking, her fingers twitching against her lap. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "We can't go to the police. Mark has people everywhere. If they warn him first..." Tom cut her off. "We ain't waiting." His voice was calm, steady. But inside, he was boiling. Mark had taken Liam, a 4-year-old boy. That was the final straw. The old train yard was on the outskirts of town, past the warehouses and abandoned lots. Tom pulled up a block away and cut the engine. "You sure he's here?" Ruth asked. Linda swallowed. "His brother, Travis, has a place just behind the yard. If Mark's hiding Liam, it's there." Tom nodded. "Stay here." Linda grabbed his arm. "Tom, please." He turned to her. "I promise you, I'm bringing your boy home." Then he stepped out into the cold night. The train yard was silent. Rusted-out freight cars lined the tracks, some covered in graffiti, others sinking into the weeds. Tom moved carefully, his heartbeat steady but strong. He didn't have a gun, never needed one before, but he had something just as dangerous. A crowbar. He gripped the metal tight as he crept toward the back of Travis' house. A single light glowed through the window. Shadows moved inside. Then, a cry. A child's cry. "Liam." Tom's blood ran hot. He stepped forward. Crack. A twig snapped beneath his boot. The back door flew open. A man stepped out. Travis, Mark's younger brother. Stocky, mean, covered in tattoos. He squinted into the dark. "The hell?" Tom moved fast. One swing, the crowbar slammed into Travis' gut. He wheezed, doubled over. Tom grabbed his collar, yanked him forward. "Where's the boy?" Travis coughed, spitting. I don't..." Tom slammed him against the wall. "Where is he?" Travis choked. "Inside. Closet." Tom threw him down. "Stay down." Then he stepped inside. The house smelled like old beer and sweat. The floor creaked under Tom's boots as he moved through the dark. Then he saw it, a small closet door bolted shut. "Liam?" Tom whispered. A soft sniffle came from inside. Tom didn't waste a second. He grabbed the crowbar, jammed it into the lock, and yanked. The door burst open. Liam was huddled in the corner, his little face tear-streaked, his tiny hands gripping his knees. Tom crouched, his voice gentle. "Come on, buddy, let's go home." Liam blinked up at him. Then, he reached out. Tom scooped him up. The boy wrapped his arms around Tom's neck, his tiny body trembling. Then, a gun cocked. "Put the boy down." Mark stood in the doorway, a pistol aimed at Tom's chest. His eyes burned with rage. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" Tom turned slightly, shielding Liam with his body. His grip tightened on the crowbar. "I ain't scared of you, Mark." Mark chuckled darkly. "You should be." Then, footsteps. Another voice. "Drop it, Mark." Detective Maria Gonzalez. She stood behind him, gun raised, badge glinting in the dim light. Mark's jaw clenched. "You set me up." Tom smirked. "Nah, you set yourself up." Mark's hand twitched. Maria's finger hovered over the trigger. "Try it," she warned. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, Mark dropped the gun. Maria lunged forward, snapping cuffs on his wrists. "Mark Evans, you're under arrest." Tom exhaled. He turned to Liam, pressing a kiss to the boy's head. "You're safe now, buddy." By sunrise, Liam was back in Ruth's arms. Linda sobbed as she held both her children. "I'm so sorry," she whispered over and over. Tom stood beside Maria, watching. "You did good," she said. Tom exhaled. "They deserve better." Maria nodded. "They got you, don't they?" Tom smiled. Maybe that was enough. The morning after Liam's rescue, the sky was a pale blue, almost like a promise of better days. Tom had barely slept, but he didn't mind. There was a peace in his heart that had been missing for years. Ruth's house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the coffee pot. The children were still asleep, curled up in blankets on the couch. Tom sat at the kitchen table, his eyes focused on the window, lost in thought. His mind kept returning to Keisha, how she used to sit in that very chair, her laugh echoing through the house. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed her until now. But now, as he looked at Ruth making breakfast, Emily and Liam safe and sound in the other room, a sense of purpose flooded him. He had something to live for again. "Mr. Tom?" Tom turned to find Emily standing in the doorway, her braids bouncing with each step. She looked up at him with wide eyes, as if waiting for permission to speak. He smiled. "Hey, little mama, what's up?" She bit her lip. I made you something." She handed him a piece of paper. Tom unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing, a simple one, but so full of emotion. In the middle, there was a big red heart. Around it were stick figures, Tom, Emily, Liam, and Ruth, all holding hands. "It's all of us," she said, her voice soft but proud. "You're like family now." Mr. Tom's chest tightened. He smiled, feeling something warm spreading inside him. "I'm real proud of that, little mama." He leaned down and gave her a hug, pulling her close. "Thank you." Emily pulled back, grinning. "I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up," she declared. "I want to help people, just like you do." Tom ruffled her hair, his heart swelling. "I think you'd make a great teacher, Emily." Later that afternoon, Tom drove to the local rehab center to visit Linda. It was her second day there, and she was already starting to turn a corner. The facility was small but peaceful, surrounded by trees and flowers. Tom walked through the doors, where Linda was sitting in a cozy lounge area. She looked up as he approached. Her face was pale, but there was a spark in her eyes, a spark Tom hadn't seen in years. "Tom." She stood up, her voice shaky but stronger than before. I don't know what to say." Tom smiled gently. "You don't need to say anything. Just take care of yourself, Linda. The kids need you, but they also need you to be strong for them." Linda nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm going to do better, Tom. I swear it. I can't change the past, but I can start fresh. I can be the mom they need." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "I believe you, Linda, but you've got to take it one day at a time. You're not alone in this." Linda looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you. For everything." Tom turned to leave, but before he did, Linda called after him. "Tom, you've given me hope. I don't know where I'd be right now without you." Tom smiled. "You're stronger than you think, Linda. Just remember that." Back at Ruth's house, life slowly began to return to normal. The kids were laughing again, their voices filling the air as they played outside. Ruth, though still tough as nails, had softened too. She and Tom had formed a bond over the past few weeks, one built on shared responsibility, shared pain, and now shared hope. Tom had started volunteering at the community center, helping kids like Emily, who had dreams of becoming a teacher. He'd spent years mourning the loss of his wife, but now he was beginning to understand that life hadn't stopped. It had just changed, and in some ways, it had become even more beautiful. He had also taken on a new role in the community, helping others who had faced struggles like his. He wasn't a therapist or a counselor, but he knew what it meant to go through pain and come out stronger on the other side. He could be that voice of reason, that calm presence when everything felt like it was falling apart. As he stood in front of the community center, watching kids run and play, he felt proud of the work he was doing. He had always believed in helping others, but now it felt like he was part of something bigger. "Mr. Tom." Emily ran up to him, her arms wide for a hug. Tom knelt down to her level, wrapping his arms around her. "What's up, little mama?" Emily grinned. "I got a big award today." She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "I won first place in the reading competition." Tom's heart swelled with pride. "You did? That's amazing, Emily." "Yeah, and I'm going to be a teacher," she added, her eyes shining with excitement. Tom chuckled. "You're already teaching me something, how to be a better man." Emily laughed, hugging him again. "You're the best," Mr. Tom. Months passed, and the family Tom had helped build slowly grew stronger. Emily and Liam had healed from the trauma they'd endured. With Ruth's steady love and Linda's newfound determination, they were thriving. Linda had completed a rehab program and was rebuilding her life. She was back to work, making amends with her past and doing everything she could to be the mother her children deserved. Tom continued to be a father figure to the children, providing stability, encouragement, and love. And in return, they gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since Keisha had passed. One evening, as they all sat around the dinner table at Ruth's house, the laughter filled the room. The small house was warm, with the aroma of Ruth's famous fried chicken and collard greens. The children were talking about their day at school, and Linda was telling a funny story from work. Tom looked around the table, a feeling of deep satisfaction settling in his chest. He had lost so much, but in a way, he had found something even more valuable: family. "Mr. Tom," Emily said, looking up at him, "can we all go to the park tomorrow?" Tom smiled, his heart light. "Of course, we'll make a whole day of it." Linda looked at him, her eyes soft with gratitude. "Thank you, Tom, for everything. We're a family now, aren't we?" Tom nodded. "Yeah, we are." And as he looked around at the faces of the people who had come to mean so much to him, he realized something important. No matter what life threw his way, he would always have his community. They had lifted him when he was down, and together, they had built something stronger than what they had before. A new beginning. And that, Tom thought, was worth everything. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know about your thoughts in the comments section. Also, subscribe the channel for daily stories notification